Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Miles, and this is the Off Menu Insights podcast. Well, today I have Lance with me. Lance, it's a pleasure. How are you doing? Tell us a little
Very
bit
good.
about
Thank you,
yourself.
Dylan. I'm doing great.
Yeah, I'm enjoying Chicago. I know we were just talking a little bit about it. Still waiting for the summer sun and the temperature to get up a little bit, but I'm enjoying it and I'm happy to dive into it with you. So please, if you will, please tell us a little bit about yourself and the company.
My name is Lance. And my wife and I created kind of the product that everyone says, "Oh, why didn't I think of that?" That's how people react when we say that we created broth in a tea bag, Millie's sipping broth. And so we did that about 12 years ago, and now we're in the thick of the CPG world, consumer product good world, having fun day after day, even if there's, good stuff, bad stuff, whatever.
But yeah, yeah, I bet it's a lot of fun. You have to have fun, otherwise people would opt out. It's not a
I would do it on a daily basis.
Yeah, I feel like you have to have that spirit, otherwise it will eat you whole. So, how long have you had the company? And just I think it's awesome to start talking about where you started, maybe the products, the idea, right? I feel like when people tell you, "Oh, that's something I should have thought of," that means it's super novel but awesome. And obviously, you've been in business for a little bit. So, please tell us how you got started, where you were at that time, and then the journey to where you're at right now in your current position with the company.
Yeah, we really started the business out of a need that we had after a job layoff. Um, in 2009, my wife and I decided that we kind of would take things into our own hands and pursue some of the fun things that we've been doing in the kitchen with food. And we created a product that was a condiment called Garlic It, and that was our first product that we kind of put out there. We had no experience, we had no references, we didn't know anybody who was in the food business, but we just decided to do it. And what that ended up doing was making us drink from a fire hose, because a year and a half after we created that product, we won Outstanding Product of the Year at the Fancy Food Show in New York for that garlic product. And it was to the point where we didn't even show up for the ceremony because we didn't know what it was all about. We didn't know that we had won. I got a phone call from the marketing director of the Specialty Food Association after we won. She said, "Next time you're up for an award, will you please come?" Because apparently they announced it and like we didn't come up, to get this award in front of, thousands of people. Anyway, that was our first entry point into the food business. And then we came up with Millie's sipping broth because of a need that Lori had as a teacher. She would be in a room with 24 kindergartners for hours. And when that bell rang, as you can probably imagine, everyone needed a break. She did, her assistant teacher, the kids, everyone. And so to be her very best, she needed something to kind of help her focus, help her relax. That wasn't all the leftover cakes and cookies from the break room in the teacher's lounge. And so she used to take a bouillon cube as a savory kind of hot drink to have instead of reaching for, Cheetos or Doritos. And I said to her, I think that's not healthy for you because it's filled with artificial stuff. And there's sodium, there's like tons of sodium. Let's, figure out something that's better for you. So we combined um, dehydrated vegetables, herbs, using all real stuff. And I gave it to her, and she said, "This is great, but it's floating all over the place. Why don't you put it into a tea bag so I can just steep it and make the broth?" And so we took Lipton tea bags, the green tea Lipton tea bags. We ripped them open, took the staples out, put this stuff into them, and then stapled it back, okay, with real staples. And I think we made like 10 or 12 of them. She took them to school, put them in the break room, and then she came back from class and they were all gone. And we realized that we had something that was probably, could be very interesting to pursue.
No, it solves a problem, right? Just the simple solution that you provided and just being creative and innovative using the resources you have. That's awesome. Now, having those products, where are you at now? Just to give people an idea of what's, have you iterated on the two that you mentioned? What's kind of the star child, if you have one? What's the breadth of everything that you have right now? Just to
Yeah,
frame it up.
for a while, our business model was come up with as many different ideas that didn't exist in the marketplace, right? Rather than iterate on things that are already out there, not another barbecue sauce. Not to say that barbecue sauce isn't great. I love it. Not another hot sauce. I love hot sauce too, but we wanted something that was a unique, that solved a problem that was personal to us, right? So that we could speak to it knowledgeably. And so we came up with, I think, 5 different things. So the first was the garlic. We came up with a water infusion. We came up with the broth. We came up with some spice mixes, all those things. And the idea was which one will take off. And it was very clear that the broth was the biggest idea and really took off. And so we kind of let the other ones kind of go to the wayside. We may at some point in the future bring them back if we want to, or different versions of them. But we really got this sense from the broth that that was going to be the thing. And, you know, our biggest indication of it being successful was getting it into people's mouths so they could taste it as quickly as possible so that we could figure out how to talk about it, if the packaging was right, what did people think of the flavors we came up with, and was the price right? So those were the key things. We had learned that from the other products that we had created as well.
What would you say getting into it? I know we've discussed previously some of your background and your wife. Getting into this world of CPG and the food world, what did you expect? And then stepping into yourself today, what do you expect from the business now and just the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think the advantage that we had is that we had no expectations. We were really it was all new to us. It was all a brand new world. I came from the software sales business. Lori's a teacher, and I knew that we had a couple things going for us that other people really didn't. We were very creative, and I knew how to sell really well. So I figured that together we could figure out something that we could make and sell, that we could build a business for ourselves. So not having an expectation early on has really helped us. We still consider ourselves very much, and we've been doing this for since 2009. So we still consider ourselves very much outsiders in this business because there are people that have way more experience than us. I mean, they were classically trained, working for RJW. I mean, I'm working for Johnson and Johnson or, those really big companies. We don't have any of that. But we're also not locked into a system that is very rigid. So that allows us to kind of think outside of the box in a lot of situations. So today we still maintain a very much a kind of a naive approach to what we're doing. Although we've learned a lot. Believe me, I mean, we've learned a lot of things about what to do, what not to do, but we still very much rely on our initial instincts that we started with, and it's really helped us out. Sometimes it's not, sometimes it hurts us, but you know, end of the analysis for what we're doing, we're creating a product for us that we feel is valuable, and that's really all that matters to us.
The creative approach, and it seems like in an environment that's going to be changing no matter what. I mean, we're talking about your software, but food world and just society in general, the consumer is going to continue to change. So I imagine having the mindset of curiosity and thinking of it from different angles that aren't exactly there can prove to be an advantage. And not only finding a new market, it seems, for certain products, but also ideating new ones and not competing, like you were saying, in something that is already going to a blue ocean in that sense.
Well, it also keeps us interested
As important,
because
that's like the beginning, yeah, what we were talking
well,
about.
yeah, I mean, if you get stuck in a rut, and or you can, I mean, there are parts of this that are very mechanical, and They need to be. They need to be very mechanical, for product safety, for reliability of delivering to big customers, making sure that you answer people's, inquiries, in a, that's all very mechanical. For creative entrepreneurs, that's can be death sometimes because you get tired of that. So always challenged to find something that's interesting that we can pursue while we're refining the product or approach, if it's a new idea or a new way to talk about the idea, those are really critical.
That brings me to something I was also thinking about and wanted to ask you in terms of we have the people like yourself, the innovative people who seem to be more action oriented. And I don't know the exact numbers in the CPG space, but I imagine each year, especially in North America, the numbers of new products every year that come out, there's a lot of people that might have these aha moments, might have had a new creation that they want to bring to the world. There's that part of it, but then getting to the reality of, I think, having the initial product that they have and improving on it. My question to you is, you talked about getting it in front of people and having them taste it and then that feedback cycle. I imagine a lot of founders can be stuck on that initial product and getting in their own heads, but I don't know if that comes from your background in doing business otherwise, just the way you're wired, but talk to us about that feedback cycle and really putting it out there early, and I imagine getting it going often.
It's interesting. I never really thought about it until you just brought it up about my background. And I think I started selling when I was really young. I mean, you would be surprised to know that I started selling Christmas trees when I was like 6 years old with my dad. And I remember distinctly that people would be looking at, the lower cost trees, and I would guide them. Here, this little pudgy 6-year old, I would guide them over to the trees that were 3 or 4 times the price, and I would have them touch the branches. And I think, at that point I realized that it's very much an experiential thing, right? Getting to connect with people as quickly as possible through a sensory experience gives a salesperson a huge advantage. It's not something that my dad taught me or anything like that. I just did it. And so that's always been wired into me. And in the food business, it's super critical to get people to experience what you have in some way, whether it's firsthand, whether it's through, someone else's eyes or someone's explanation or something like that. But, how do you describe the deliciousness of Thai lemongrass broth that's citrusy and savory? How do you, without getting someone to taste it? Well, you can do it visually, you can do it, like I'm doing right now or how I'm explaining it. But what's critical is, and what's critical for us and anyone in the CPG space is people coming and buying the product or seeking it out because they've heard of it or they've experienced it, because that's what keeps it going. There you have to create like this, this hamster wheel of awareness and seeking it out and usage, and then over and over, and then word of mouth. And that's the ultimate.
You said you started this with several different products, 2009. It's been a while. What have you learned? The landscape has changed. I mean, social media, like there's been so many different technological changes, the distribution of getting that across, all of the things you explained about trying to get your product in front of people. If you can't have them literally drink it or eat it, you have to find out other ways. What have you either learned in these years to then put into your strategy today for your current products going forward?
Yeah, it's easy to get distracted with everything that changes or goes on. But what we have learned is if you can kind of consider like concentric circles that, start with that end user, start with the end customer, the one who's consuming it, and then go out from there. To the people who sell it, to the people who distribute it, marketing, all that kind of stuff. The focus on that center circle cannot be lost. You can easily get distracted by not focusing on that. The minute you lose that focus on that center end consumer, all bets are off. And it doesn't matter anything you do because that consumer is going to drive sales, it's going to drive awareness, it's going to help you focus and refine your product offering in a way that they get to tell more of their friends because that's the goal. You want that person who has an amazing experience with your product to tell everyone they know. I have a great Do you have time for a really quick fun story that I just learned yesterday?
Please.
Okay.
We have long form. This is
Okay, it's
perfect
long form.
story time.
This and stories like this literally bring goosebumps to Lori and I when we hear this because it's the craziest thing. I mean, I still can't believe it. So I was on a ski trip with a friend. He was leaving. We were in Montana. The next day, he was coming back to Seattle and then going to the Virgin or to the Canary Islands to help a friend move a sailing yacht that they had brought over from Europe. And I'm like, okay, first world problems. Great. That's great. So I just saw him yesterday. Now, this was weeks ago. I just saw him yesterday at an event. We weren't planning to see each other. And he said, I got to tell you something. You know, the family that we helped move the yacht? And I said, yeah. He said, I was talking to them about how they provision their food because when they're going across the ocean, they can't stop, right? They have to be able to have enough food to make it across, for 20 days or however long it takes to get from, one continent to the next. And he said, I was asking them about that. And they said, oh, yeah, we prepare ahead of time and we, portion things out and freeze them and everything. And one thing that really helps us is we found this soup broth that is amazing that really has been a lifesaver for us. And my friend goes, what's the name of it? And he goes, I don't know, but here, let me go get a box. And he brings out a box and shows him our product. And he said, and he goes, and he looked, and in their cabinet, they had like cases of Millie sipping broth. And he said, I was just skiing with the guy, the co creator of that. Anyway, so that word of mouth. And he said, how did you find out about it? Well, the owner of the yacht was at like some yacht event where other people were giving best practices on sailing and the guy that was talking said, I found this broth that's really amazing. You guys should all go get it. I didn't know who the guy was. He took it upon himself to do that. And anyway, full circle, full circle.
That is crazy. I mean, out of all of the places that you could guess some word of mouth will go to, that is
On the
not
yacht in the Canary
even on
Islands.
the
Yeah.
top 50 list. That's incredible. And it goes to show, yeah, solving problems. You solve the problem, it could find a lot of uses. It
So I,
carries
I
through.
think
That
I think
flywheel.
if we corner the yachting, the ultra expensive yacht market, with Broth, I think we got it.
Yeah, you have to buy many cases of it.
Yes,
It is
yes.
part of just standard operating procedure to have
Maybe
as
we'll
much
we'll be
broth as
seen on
possible.
below deck on
Yeah.
Bravo, with our broth.
You never know. I love that. I love that story. And it it goes to show you don't know exactly where things are going to land. And I know it's kind of going into the strategy of what you talked about, just being customer focused. I think taking that half step back, I want to dig a little bit deeper because I think the concept isn't new. I imagine if you started a CPG company, right? Even any company, right? Focus on the focus on the customer. Don't let that get out of sight. What are some things in your experience that you've learned that actually puts it into action? It could be super detailed things. It could be how you operate week by week. Because I think that idea everyone would agree with, but there's another thing to put it into practice in your minds.
Well, paying bills really, forces you to think, practically about generating income. That's one thing. Our we wanted a family business that would support our lifestyle of, focusing on our kids and being able to, work when it worked for us, and being creative, having a creative outlet that was satisfying and other people got satisfaction from. I think those three things, believe it or not, were really the things that kind of got us up and moving. And we still focus on that. They're kind of simple ideas, but but that, I think a lot of company, they go really far and they say they want to, they want to save the planet and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. I mean, it's absolutely noble, but we're tiny little specks in the whole thing. So I think that, the trends that we absolutely support are we're a plant-based product, we're vegan, we're delivering broth in a new way. There's a lot of focus right now on processed foods and how processed foods are really not in favor right now by the current administration. And our product is a non-processed broth, which makes it very unique in the whole scheme of things because it's just herbs, spices, and vegetables combined. I mean, a lot of the broth that's out there is, made months ahead of time into a liquid concentrate or into a paste, and it's been processed. It has stabilizers, it has preservatives. We don't do that. You know, we're definitely much has changed on what we're doing, and we're not chasing trends. Absolutely not. It'd be super easy for us to chase every single trend that comes up. And believe me, in the CPG world, it's pretty much on a 6 to 8 month cycle. That's that kind of stuff. When we're involved in a lot of groups that support up and coming, and we still consider ourselves up and coming, even though we're in 3,000 stores, compared to the Procter and Gambles and that kind of stuff out there, we're like nothing. But, you know, I think, sticking to those core values for us have really kind of benefited us, even though we're not like the most sexy thing out there, for the day.
No, that makes sense, and I think, keeping you talked about, I guess to me that the answer is a lot of like what motivates you and keeps you going. And you know that focusing on the customer, focusing on uh, the ingredients, the kind of the true authentic part of the product and your why. It sounds like, obviously your family, you mentioned just kind of the legacy, a little bit of the bigger picture allows you to stay grounded and focused on, okay, if I keep focusing on the customer, high quality product, and continuing to grow. That's the way there to do it.
They're
Uh,
very basic fundamentals, really.
yeah, no, I love that.
But
I
guess what?
imagine for people, it's overwhelming at times. I
It
imagine you
is.
start not only that, but after you get maybe your first big break or yeah, everything feels big, I imagine, on the journey there, but it gets even noisier and noisier. So just
Yeah.
having that way to handle it. Yeah.
So I get to have fun doing social media stuff like this, or, focusing on how to communicate with, our next big market that's adopting our product. But the bottom line is making sure that the product tastes amazing, not just good, amazing, and listening to what people say about it. Listen, and that's another thing too. Really early on, listening to way people responded to us about the product was critical, and we still do that. I mean, not to say that we don't get defensive sometimes about, it's our baby, right? But we have to kind of put our egos to the side sometimes and kind of go, maybe, they're saying something that we need to listen to. So that's really critical.
Yeah. How's it been scaling in terms of the capacity? I know you had multiple things. It seems like you know what to focus on now, but I think speaking to that, because I know that's a part where people in this industry might have a lot of trouble with, of course, getting demand. But if you could speak to any insights on actually scaling the operational side of it. I know you mentioned the creative side, like the fun part, it seems for a lot of people, especially people like yourself, you could kind of put it all together and have this like novel idea. But how can people not get tripped up by the other part in terms of scaling?
I don't have the right answer for everybody. What worked for us was building foundational blocks at a very methodical pace. But at the same time, there are opportunities that come along that you can't ignore and you got to jump on them. So, as an example, when we started off at fairs and festivals. We started off at the Pike Place Market in Seattle across the street. We were in a little booth across the street from the original Starbucks, handing out samples of broth in August when it was, 100 degrees outside. How crazy is that, right? But the opportunities that came to us, we kind of created them. I mean, there were timing and hard effort, created these opportunities. One of them was, before we got into a lot of retail stores, before we decided to go into retail stores, we got discovered by Weight Watchers because our product is a great tool for people who don't want to snack. Kind of, it was the Ozempic before Ozempic. I mean, it made you feel like you were satisfied. And they put us on the front page of their website and sold right before COVID hit. So we were going through COVID with a bunch of people who were sitting at home, losing or trying to lose weight or struggling with their weight or whatever. And it just, we rose to become the best-selling vegetable broth on Amazon. So what that did is forced us to step up our production game to the point where we sold out sometimes. There were times where we couldn't fulfill the orders because we were sold out. But it also forced us to make sure that we were working with the right manufacturing partners. And we had to go through about 5 before we got to the right one that could grow with us because we outgrew their capabilities each time. So that was critical. Just reading the leaves on, can these people support you or not, and what do you do to move beyond that, that was critical for us. So that helped us, and then it also gave us confidence. Each time we built up to a level like that, it gave us confidence to go after something bigger. And the really big break came, we went out to retail in 2022, I think it was. We got an opportunity to pitch our product to Walmart at Walmart Open Call, which is something they do every year. And they invited 7,000 products applied, invited around 650 to meet with in person on their campus, half of them virtually and the other half in person. So we went um, and got selected as a product that they wanted to bring in by Walmart and Sam's Club on opposite days. So it just blew us away. So basically we went and we had to make more product in 1 week than we had made in a year before that. I mean, that's kind of how so that put a lot of stress, in a lot of different ways, but it also showed us that we could do it. And thank God for our manufacturing partners. Thank God for, we have a lot of outsourced resources that help us, and they all stepped up to the plate big time. There were some sleepless nights, but we were able to do it. And we know, that the next big jump, we know kind of what to expect. But look, there are challenges every day that we can't control outside of our, the price of gas has gone up, resources are getting more expensive. And all we have to do, all we can focus on is what we have right in front of us and what we can control. And, the bottom line is the customer experience.
Well said. And yeah, that's, it's kind of like, wait, I'm really stressed out, but this is kind of what we prayed for, right? This is kind of what we were waiting for. So it's time to do our best and act and keep our heads on straight. And it sounds like you guys have definitely done that. Where you're at now, what is your goal in terms of reaching out to other people? Those are some big names you just dropped there. And I think you obviously have had a lot of success so far, but I know just talking to you that this isn't the end of the road, right? You talked about leaving a legacy, continuing to grow, not maniacally, but in a steady, very strong way. What are some of the retailers or other people that would be a dream to hear from, get your
Yeah,
product
I
in
mean, we
stores?
jumped, from I think like 50 stores to 3,000 in a 2-year period, which took a little bit of time to stabilize. And we're still kind of stabilizing from that right now. The biggest challenge is making sure that there's customer awareness to go into that many locations, and that's a challenge. It's an ongoing thing. We would love to bring on more clients like Wegmans and Rayleigh's and regional specialty metropolitan foods here up our metropolitan market here in Seattle. We have these regional specialty grocers that are amazing to work with, but our value to them is pushing people into the soup aisle to go get our stuff on an ongoing basis because our product is, you use it over and over and over again. It's not like cooking broth where you use it every once in a while. It's not like opening a can of Campbell soup. This is something you use on a daily basis. So what we've really been focusing on now is driving trial and awareness of our product in non-traditional retail channels. As an example, in the food service business, you have various types of applications. People who work in big companies, they all have break rooms. Well, what do they have there? They have coffee, tea, soda, something like that. Broth in a tea bag is an incredible application. Why do we know this? Because that's what it was created for. We created it to
Yes.
be used by a teacher in a teacher break room. That's, we know it works. So we're pushing to get into those opportunities. We're working with some very large companies that provide that service for very big companies. Another example is getting into cafes and coffee shops. They're always looking for higher margin products that they can add to a cup of hot water that they can serve as, to their customers. Broth is, as an easy add-in for that. So we're working on that. And the other thing that we're working on is in the healthcare sector. We're working with dietitians and chefs in the healthcare space that provide meals to patients in hospitals or recovery clinics or senior care. Those are all viable. And oh, by the way, broth is critical in all of those situations. And here we have a new way, an amazing flavor that's not chicken or beef, but you've got Thai lemongrass, you've got pho, you've got spicy tortilla, tomato, basil, all of these very rich and vibrant flavors that are now being available. So what does that do for us? Well, it, increases demand, but it also increases awareness because if they have a great experience with it in those systems, they're more likely to tell more people about it and to go seek it out in retail. So those are the things that we're doing now. If you ask me, what would be my dream? My dream is to get on an airline. Can you imagine having the beverage cart come down and the flight attendant saying, do you want coffee, tea, or the spicy tortilla broth that is incredible? What do you think people would say?
I'm very much in on that because I selfishly would be choosing that literally every single time. No joke, honestly. I love that. Yeah. Just the creative channels there in the thinking. I've heard now speaking to people in the industry, I have something great. People love it when they try it. But now I just need to educate people. I just need to educate people, right? Or I just need to get into retail or get into this channel and then people will come. And I think people should really listen to like all the things that you just said and just the creativity around that is, at least to me, educating them without telling them, "Hey, learn this." But when you're in the hospital or when you're in these places, when you're on the plane, now you learn, wow, this is great. This solved the solution. I was a little hungry. I didn't have food. I could still have this very healthy broth. I know for me, I don't want to have something that's sugary. I would look for that. Or in the office, I would have loved that instead of having like way too much caffeine and coffee just to kind of because I didn't have anything else to choose from other than water and coffee at the time, or just like a very sugary pop. So I think that's it's really, really great and creative of you. Would you say those dreams, are there certain companies out there? And if I know that you named a couple different markets. I imagine there's many, many players that you'd be very happy to partner with in that. We could call them out too, of course. And then yeah, we could kind of do that first if you have anyone in mind.
Yeah, okay. So dream retailer, I mean, we love working with Walmart. That's great. Dream retailer would be Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's, I think our product is a perfect fit for that
I
customer
see.
base because it's unique. It's just a twist on broth. I mean, it's not like it's, we've been drinking broth for thousands of years. It's not like it's something, crazy. But unique, something that they go there to get over and over again, that would be amazing. As far as airlines, I mean, we'd love to work with, our backyard is Alaska Airlines. Delta Airlines has got an office here too. American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, all the airlines. We would love to be, on the beverage cart, in the lounges, those those two things are would be our dream. And one of the things you were talking about is as you're starting out, you're kind of thinking, oh, I just need to get on the shelf because it'll solve this problem or whatever. And lately, I've actually been asked by a couple of companies who are looking to launch something, and they go, what's your biggest advice piece of advice? And I say, well, don't quit your day job, don't, because that's your best source of funding, and stay away from retail as long as you possibly can. Build a customer base directly. Amazon is amazing. Your own website is amazing. Social media is amazing. In fact, I had lunch yesterday at the same event I was talking about with somebody who built his entire business and he never had a website. It was all on Facebook. All he did is he would put out pictures of his food on Facebook and it drove everyone crazy. And so, there are so many different ways to do it, but stay away from the places that are going to have an expectation of you completely depleting their stock, and you're kind of going, well, aren't you going to sell it for me? And they'll go, no, this is just a place where it's sold. You have to sell it.
Yeah. And you pay for it to be there too.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
It's not
In many
free, that's for
ways.
sure. Yeah, I think that's just such, wise words, but I imagine it's hard because, people get into it, and that naivete, right? You're like, "Oh, wow, there's all these different things," and so you kinda listen to the first route that comes to your mind or you hear when you start searching things up of like, okay, this is what I have to do now is to do it. That's really great. Where do you see it going forward? I know these are some of the visions of where you're putting in some energy and resources because I think those would break out and continue the growth in a great way. Is there any other new markets or is there a certain strategy or goal? Do you have an eye on a new award or a new place for 2026? What are your eyes?
Yeah, I think, very much stabilizing the demand, that supports the retailers that we're in, expanding our hospital, food care, food service business is critical, and, really figuring out new ways to connect with people that's meaningful. Those three things are really, really kind of what drives our day to day. We do think about big ideas like partnering with really large companies that could take us to more places, right? Having that muscle behind us to take us into accounts that wouldn't consider us normally. That would be awesome. There's tons of those opportunities out there. But really, I think that just focusing on that awareness and trial in as many meaningful ways as possible is really what we focus on. And like, for example, the hospital food service business didn't really come to fruition. It actually came to fruition about 2 years ago, where we became aware of it. But it took 2 years to get it to kind of happen. And so, it's critical to note that you cannot rely on one thing. You have to try different things that seem natural and that are not going to break your bank. In fact, if you don't have to spend any money on it, that's better. If it's time, that's okay. But, putting Facebook ads out there, not going to solve every problem. Hiring social media influencers, not going to solve every problem. So, I spend a lot of time putting out little clips of videos of how to use our product, why it's important, what I've learned about running the business that may or may not relate to our product. And so, lately I've just really been focusing on that and sharing information like what we're doing right now with people because that's how we learned how to do everything.
Yeah, that's well said. Adding value. That's what I heard. Adding value and tapping into all of the senses. Like you said, back when you were 6 years old, you kind of started to figure this out of how do I tap into the senses and create an experience. And if I can't have everyone literally try it, physically drink it themselves, how can I take them on some sort of experience? And stay grounded and focused. So I
And
love
those
it.
those other Christmas trees, they did smell and look a lot better.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. See, you're it's just natural. It's just natural. I love it. I think that's a great way to kind of wrap up. But before we do so, where can people find you? I know you dropped us some of the places where they can find you, but I know you have a website, you have many other places. You're adding a lot of value. Please let us know.
Yeah, so we're in Amazon. Millie Sipping Broth. We're on our own website, milliesippingbroth.com. We're in a lot of different retailers. We're in about half the Walmarts in the country. You can come to our website and there's a store finder link and you can get to it from there. If you happen to be in, a certain hospital and they have room service and you see broth on the menu, that's Millie Sipping Broth, then you can get it served to you there. But we always respond to people who suggest where, they would like to see it. So that's always a big, responsibility of ours to follow up with too. And it does work, especially when people, they request it either through whatever their retailer that they like to go to, or they ask us to reach out. So yeah, definitely, please let us know where you'd like to see it.
Yeah. Please, everyone start hitting up all the airlines. Let's start a
Yes,
mass
please.
messaging campaign
That's all we
and
need. We just need
let's get the whole audience and everyone else.
or luxury yachts, one of the two.
You
Yeah.
know what? Send it to both and let's get it into the right places here.
Yes.
Everyone
Yes.
will benefit. It's healthy, it's good, it's tasty, it's easy, it's awesome.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
very good. Everyone check those things out. I know I definitely will. And it's been a pleasure, Lance. I appreciate you
Thank you,
coming
Dylan.
and sharing some of your words.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Okay.